12:30. First, I want to thank everyone for tuning in, and we're so excited to have you here in the Electrified Employment Panel. We have some great folks here to share some information with you and really help guide this transition that is happening. We're all super duper excited about the new infrastructure bill and everything that we're going to do and build together as an industry, a space, and in a country. However, there are some nuances that we have to pay close attention to, and there are folks in the space of workforce development in particular that have now become very essential to what we need, what ways we need to go, insight we need to ponder, and this group is just, to me, a great group of folks to start that conversation. So we want to tell our audience that the Electrified Employment discussion was really created with you in mind. We have an idea of who's in the room, so we're glad to have you. We won't go into full bios because we have things to talk about. If you want to find us, our bios are located at the eMobility, equityconference.com. So when you get in there and you find our panel, you'll see our picture and all of our information, and you can just comb through it. However, we will introduce ourselves. So to my panel, please share your name, your area of expertise, our position, and the company, our organization that you're a part of. I'll get started with Sharon.
Hi, everyone. So I'm Sharon Sagato. I'm the Workforce Development Manager over at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, also known as LACY.
Okay, Shreyas.
Hi, everybody. Shreyas Jethkar. I work at the California Workforce Development Board on the Policy, Legislation, and Research branch, and excited to be here.
Yolanda.
Hello, my name is Yolanda Passman. I work General Motors. I'm a UAW representative employee. I'm the UAW communications coordinator here at Factory Zero.
Great, thank you so much. And Jackie?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jacqueline Ivy Harden, and I'm the Managing Director of Perscola Seattle, which is a national organization that provides free tech training for adult workforce. Pleasure to be with you all today.
Great. So let's jump on in. We all had a chance to meet for a short while, just to everyone in the room. We had a short chance to meet and really just figure out what we want to talk about, what we thought was most important that we could pass to you in an hour. And we really connected organically about some things and not just sharing information with you, but also some things to be aware of and to really think about. So I want to hop on in with Shreyas first. If you can answer this question for me. A main focus for you is policy, and everyone here will represent a different part of workforce development. So I'm interested to know, what are you currently working on, and how does it directly play into the idea of electrified employment, or furthering what we've already started with electrified employment?
Yeah, great. So first, I just want to share a little bit about sort of our vision here at the State Workforce Board. We adopted a vision of the high road, which is this notion that economic growth, income equality, wealth equality, and a clean, healthy environment are all equally important and mutually reinforcing. We can't have one without the other. It's not a trade-off between, do we have an equitable society or do we have economic growth? We think these things are mutually compatible, mutually reinforcing. And we kind of break this down to talk about the principles of the high road. Really is about equity, job quality, and climate protection. So that's really our way of orienting to the policy world and also the world of workforce training. So to really get to your question, there's two things I wanted to hit on. One is the state of California has a master plan for getting more zero emission vehicles on the road and getting the charging and refueling infrastructure to power those vehicles. And that's put together in a document that came out earlier this year called the Zero Emission Vehicle Market Development Strategy, or the ZEV strategy. And workforce is actually one of the 4 pillars of this state strategy. So that translates into 2 things. One is on the training side. We and many other state agencies are investing in this sector of clean transportation. We've had investments in a number of areas like public transit and freight, warehousing, manufacturing, et cetera. We have a lot of new funding, and we're really looking to coordinate with other state agencies that are also investing in this space. And what we're trying to do is make sure that collectively we're really, again, thinking about the high road. And I'll save a little bit of what that means for later in the context of workforce development. But the big point to share right now is that we do not believe we can train our way out of inequality. That it takes more than paying attention to training. We really focus on jobs, and that's really the work that I do, is making sure that, you know, equity is our goal, economic equity in particular. And so we need to deal with the jobs and the businesses. Otherwise, we're kind of fighting with one hand behind our back. So the work that we do that shows up in this strategy and other places is we get very specific and clear around, at a goal level, being clear that when we say we want more jobs in this space, we want good quality jobs, and we want those jobs to be accessible to various priority populations. And so it's the same kind of theory of change as environmental justice or any other notion of justice, is that it doesn't happen. Our society, our economy we have a system that is tilted against that. So we have to be deliberate. We have to intervene in labor markets so that we are creating good quality jobs and using our authority as a state to make that so. And I'll just give you one example of how we're actually putting that into practice. At the Public Utilities Commission here, they regulate all of the big investor-owned utilities like PG&E and San Diego Gas and Electric. We work with the Public Utilities Commission, which now requires those utilities to tell the Public Utilities Commission how are they addressing job quality, job access, alignment with this high road notion of workforce development whenever they come and apply to use our ratepayer money to invest in charging infrastructure. So it's really about being deliberate and intentional, so that we can actually make sure that our climate agenda is really on the high road.
Thank you so much. You came in hot. I mean, as you were talking, I was like, should I type notes or should I just wait until everybody's brains were going? But you really touched on some really good things. And one thing I didn't say before you got started was that this idea of workforce development sometimes is very narrow. And now that we're entering into this new space of this new green space, you know, there's blue collar and white collar. Now we have green collar, right? Now that we're entering into this space, it's almost revamping, reimagining, revising how we see workforce development. And one thing you talked about was equity and equality, and not just having training pipelines, but also having job attachments, which is really, really key, because both are very important. But I think often we find that the word pipeline kind of gets overused, right? It's like, we made a pipeline. I'm like, okay, and where are those jobs with that pipeline? And so I think this green space will kind of call people to the carpet to say, like, where are the jobs? Because we're doling money out and we want to see where these jobs are. And it's going to force employers and companies to really think about how to create new jobs, because that is what this whole space is about. We're saying it's new things. There should be new jobs, not necessarily new people, because sometimes folks have to be retrained and cross-trained and up-trained, but there should be new jobs coming alive. So I'll move to Sharon, because Sharon, I know you focus on the training piece, right? And we're not kicking training, because training is essential to a job. So I would love to hear from you. You work at Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator. I would love to hear from you. What are you training on specifically in this new green world? What are you training on? Who are you training, and who are you training them for?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good question. So pretty much at the Los Angeles Clean Tech Incubator, for those who aren't familiar with us, we're a nonprofit organization that is focused on building an inclusive green economy. So for our workforce development initiatives, our plan is to help underrepresented groups succeed in the green economy, and even just to get an opportunity for a green job. So our program is pretty much multi-tiered. So in addition to the technical training, they also receive a professional development, career coaching, as well as industry recognized certifications. So the reason behind that is because we want to provide them with a more well-rounded kind of training and development experience. So as Yvette had mentioned, like some of them, they already have the experience, but they want to transition to clean technology. So as you guys know, this person could be super smart. They can have all these technical skills, but you need to have like a legit resume. You need to know how to interview nowadays. You need to know how to deal with imposter syndrome, especially for women and minorities. So we really try to set them up and kind of set them up for success with that in mind. Sorry, the other question was, who do we train for?
Yeah, like I know you all work with startups in particular, but is that the focus, or is there anyone?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. So we train for pretty much high road green jobs, which focuses on Lacey's 3 focus areas, such as transportation, electrification, clean energy, and smart and sustainable cities. So some examples from the past are we hosted a training program focused on EVSE maintenance in partnership with Charger Help. We also had a training focused on electrical vehicle maintenance, and then software development and IT support as it relates to clean technology. And then you had asked who we're creating this pipeline for. Pretty much a unique aspect about working for an incubator is we're providing the talent to our startups initially, but at a broader level, we're actually creating jobs for the overall ecosystem.
Thank you so much. So interesting. Thank you. I personally, I didn't even introduce myself. I'm Yvette Ellis, co-founder, chief workforce officer at Charger Help, and we fix broken EV charging stations. And I've had the pleasure of working with Lacey to actually recruit talent from our first, 6 hires was from one of their workforce development programs. So I definitely know the value in finding workforce development programs that are training for my particular industry, space in the industry, and even having somewhere to go and say, hey, this is what we're looking for. Can you help us with that? So we'll talk more about how those relationships are developed. But I want to hear from Jackie, because Jackie, you're on the placement end. You like, give me the jobs and I will find you the people. And I know you do some training as well, but if you can focus specifically on placement and what role does placement play in this new green economy as it relates to, say, policy and even training?
Yeah, so the placement piece is, of course, one of the most essential pieces of this process, because when you think about a workforce development strategy, we're putting together the training in order to put them into these high quality jobs. So I think the importance of us to understand the distinction between the two is that, to Sheree's point earlier, people focus really heavily on the training piece, but where it falls apart is at that critical juncture of we need to be able to place them. And so as both you and Sharon were talking, it's like you've found that beautiful marriage of the two, right? It's Lacey is being able to cultivate the talent, and then you as Charger Help, who is an employer, were then able to take that qualified, that skilled talent from that training pipeline and directly put them into placement. And I think that we have to have more partnerships like that. And that's what we also do at Perscolis, right? So we want to make sure if we're going to offer that training, that placement has to be a part of that key KPI that we're striving for. Because again, we cannot talk about economic equity and building a prosperous future for everyone if in the end they walk away from this training doing the same job they had prior to, or if they're not being put in a thriving wage or a family sustaining wage job.
Thank you so much. That's so key, because it drives me nuts when folks say like workforce development. I'm like, well, if work is not actually developed, then it's not workforce development. And I know everybody wants to use that buzzword of workforce development, equity, inclusion. Well, if we don't find equitable jobs, if we're not inclusive, if it's not diverse, and then it's not workforce development. So development means it can be a job creation, right? Just for Charter Help, we created the position of the EVSE technician, electric vehicle supply equipment technicians. Our technicians fix EV charging stations, right? More on the software side, but we fix EV charging stations. So to make that legit and to legitimize it, we went to the Department of Labor and we asked to get a ONET code, which is really the code that the DOL uses to say like, hey, this is how much this position makes, this is the skill set of this position, and all the other details that will go along with that position, which is very important for workforce development folks, because this is how we place, right? When we put somebody in, we say someone is placed, we use the ONET code. So we thought that would be very important to do so, to make sure that we are actually contributing to the workforce goals that our country actually has. So if you're making up positions, y'all, if you're out there and you're making up positions, and it is not equitable until everybody has the opportunity to apply for it. So we'll get into the different types of pipelines that we can really tap into to get that workforce that we all dream about and that we're striving towards. But I think that's so important, Jackie. The jobs end of it is what really closes the deal with making what we're doing equitable. Is actually the job, not just the training. So, Yolanda, nice to see you. You have been busy. You were introducing some pretty big folks yesterday. Can you share with us who you introduced yesterday?
Yesterday we had the honor of having President Joe Biden here, and I had the great honor of introducing them on stage.
That is a huge deal.
Yes.
So congratulations on that. I mean, I don't know if we can top that. We didn't introduce the president yesterday. So wonderful, wonderful. Glad to have you here. If you could share with our audience very quickly, just from an employer's perspective, as we shift into this green space, are there any things in particular that you see popping up that employers are looking for as it pertains to workforce development? Any new skills, or are they looking for any particular kinds of pipelines?
Let's see, so here a lot of things have gone to electric, correct? So because we're an all electric vehicle plant, a lot of it has to do with computers, and I would say just an open mind, just working with each other, making sure that everybody is comfortable in working on everybody's strengths, correct? So yes, right. I think they've really gotten a good grasp on trying to get everybody included and taking everybody's ideas and just running with them, and not just I would say just a one mindset. They've really brought in their view on how things are done and getting them done properly.
Thank you. Yeah. I think that's great. Were you finished, or did I cut you off?
No, it was fun. Yeah.
I will. You gotta tell me. So with that, thinking that, some maybe historically gas or anything outside of green companies are now moving over to green and electricity and things like that. It's great to hear that these companies have an open mind, like your company, General Motors, have an open mind and really are taking in insight from other places, which is a great place to start for workforce development folks, because we have a lot to share with companies about how to find the right candidate pool for who you're looking for. So it's really interesting to hear that they are open to that. And I'm wondering, and you may not know this offhand, but I'm wondering if anyone's in the chat that can tell us. I'm wondering, who are those specific folks that would take in this information or talk to workforce development programs, agencies, and centers, folks that Jackie or Sharon could talk to about the pipelines that they're creating to connect them to the jobs that you all have going on there. So not at just General Motors in particular, but at any company, is there a designated person that these folks with these pipelines of people that we are training can actually connect to? So if you know anything, put it in the chat. If not, you can contact us later. But these are the actual connections that need to happen from employers to the actual training and placement providers. They are essential to this actually moving, and not us just hearing the information and not reaching out and making those connections. So now that we've got into like, you all can see the differences in our panelists here. We have training, we have placement, we have policy, we have someone from actual employer, and myself as well. I am an employer as well. I want to get into the things that are not so comfortable to talk about, the things that we get off the panels and then talk to our colleagues about, like, what in the heck? So let's talk about those a little bit. And let's start off with some of the pitfalls that we see coming as workforce development professionals in our own spaces. What are some of the pitfalls that we see coming with this brain and money we have going on, which we're very excited about? Please don't get that twisted. We are very excited about the money. We're very excited about the strides that we can make as an industry, and of course, saving our planet. We are excited about this, but we still have to beware of some things to make sure that everything comes out as equitable and as fair as we intended for it to in the very beginning. So I'm going to start with Sherez, and I would love to know on the policy end, do you foresee one or two pitfalls that you're like, hey, everybody, pay attention to this?
Yeah, I think you kind of hit on it. I mean, several others here, have kind of touched on this already. Around, jobs and understanding what the jobs are and what's the scale really. Our motto here is to start with the jobs and then figure out what the training pathways are up and into those jobs. Too often we sell environmental policy in this country based on job numbers because, like James Carville said 20 some years ago, it's the economy. I'll leave out the rest of his quote. And so I think what I've seen, being in this space for a while is that too often we're using models to tell us, what kind of job numbers to expect, but people take that like gospel and then they're like, where are those jobs? We need to have a better alignment of the demand side of the labor market and the supply side, the jobs and workers, employers, and the training institutions. So we need to be real about what the actual demand is, because otherwise we're raising a lot of expectations. And I think that it ends up doing a disservice to the communities that we're trying to serve in this effort. The other one that I touched on before is, not all green jobs are good jobs. Manufacturing, people love talking about manufacturing and how we need to bring back manufacturing to the US, and I'm all about that. Manufacturing, the job quality has been eroded in that sector for decades. And it's only as good as it is because unions are there and they're strong and they represent workers and their interests. So these things don't just happen by accident. And as I said before, like as a state agency, we are very interventionist. We are very deliberate about making this case that, if it's not a good quality job, it's probably not worth training somebody for. And you've got to connect those two pieces. And then the last one I would say is kind of more in the realm of job training, if you will, is, and really it shows up in policy too, but train for occupations and not for something green. If we want people to have a career, think about occupations and think about systems of training pathways and pipelines. These are not new industries. These are not new jobs. I mean, somebody making an electric vehicle is still an assembly line worker. Somebody servicing a zero emission transit bus, which are taking off in California, they're still a mechanic. So, if you don't, it's kind of like your ONET point. Think systems wide, and that will actually help us make sure that we're connected to existing training pathways. We're connected and understand what the real demand is. And then one last point, actually, I forgot to throw in is when we're really thinking about serving people with barriers to employment, we need to make sure that we're providing supportive services. The curriculum, the skills and knowledge that people get is obviously important. The supportive services to make sure, that people can complete training, they can, when they are in a job, they can, stay in that job, et cetera. Are hugely important, if not almost more important than just the skills and knowledge sharing that happens in a classroom or even on the job. So those are my quick points of some things to be aware of as we move forward.
Those are some excellent points as a an entrepreneur and a business owner myself, I have learned that you have to be intentional from the top down, right? That your jobs will be quality jobs. And going into building Charter Health, as the co-founders, one thing we thought about a lot was the wage and the importance and the dignity that comes with the wage. And also the work that we expect with this wage, right? So for that, we start our techs off at $30 an hour. It doesn't matter what state they're in. We're in about 11 states. But we start them off at $30 an hour because that is us saying that you are important, just as important. And without you, there's no Charter Health. And we put that dignity into $1. And I think people want people to be proud of what they do and come to work and have a great attitude and stay there forever. And there's no path for growth. And I also agree with you that employers, my folks, need to take responsibility for that, right? We have to take responsibility for creating quality jobs and not just saying like, hey, we're hiring a lot of people, but we're hiring, even if you can't hire a lot of people initially, let's hire some great people with some great wages. And that's the start that we want. Over promising is just something that in the workforce development workspace has been popular, and I'm just hoping that we don't overpromise people, because that's when we get big letdowns. But we're very realistic about what we can hire for, how many people we can hire for, because it may not be your space in the ecosystem that may be the booming space. It may be another space that's booming, but we can't see that if everybody is saying their space is booming, right? There's hiring and then there's mass hiring, and we want to know both. So our workforce development folks can figure out where to move people, where to train people. And if we are puffing these numbers up, right, and giving numbers that aren't real because we're just hopeful, versus what we can actually do and produce, then it's going to put us in the rut. So thank you so much for that information. I'm going to come to you next, Jackie, but Sharon, I want to know from you on the training side, can you list a pitfall or two that you see coming, or maybe that you've even experienced that we need to be aware of?
Yeah, for sure. I think the best way to put it is, I was actually talking to my colleague earlier, Daniel Ferguson, about it. And the best way he put it was like, the right hand doesn't know what the left hand is doing. So for example, like CBOs and like community colleges, we're all hosting, and nonprofits are all hosting the same training. So we have this talent pipeline, but they don't know where to put the talent. So we need to have like a regional consortium of having everyone together, the CBOs, the nonprofits, the trainers, the employers, so that we're creating this program that's intentional rather than this train and pray method that we had mentioned earlier.
Thank you. Oh, I like that idea. Look at Sharon rolling in here with the tools. This is what you need to do. Beware of this and then go do this. I love it. Jackie?
Yeah, that is spot on, Sharon, and absolutely something that we talk about here at Perscolas as well. We can only train X amount of folks for the workforce, and we can only place X amount of folks in the workforce. So we're really trying to develop this really robust ecosystem so that wherever a person is in their workforce journey, whether they need to be upskilled or whether they are ready for a direct placement with an employer, we need to have a stronger infrastructure to immediately place them to meet employer need. But then we also need to make sure that the jobs that they're going into, to Shreyas's point, are actually thriving wage jobs, right? Because it's not enough to just have a job. And I think that's also one of the pitfalls that we run into traditionally in workforce development. It is, we get the win or the W as soon as they are placed. And it's not thoroughly vetted that this is a placement that leads to a family sustaining wage. It is not a job that says like, hey, this is actually within the sector and it's a viable wage job. It's, hey, I got the employment verification done and dusted. That's one other person off my caseload, and now I can move on to the next one, right? So I can see that, especially as all of these dollars come in, and folks are going to start creating their own new training programs that have no history of being successful. And then you're going to see folks who will really fall apart on the placement side of this, because there's always this constant issue of, what does it mean to have an engaged employer? What does it mean to build an employer partnership, right? It's very common in workforce development to say like, oh, if Yolanda gave, $15 to Perscolis for us to print flyers, then all of a sudden, General Motors is our employer partner. And that is how it's seen in many cases, but that's not how it should be, right? So we have to have more intentionality on building strategic partnerships with employers so that the training that you're offering is market driven and that it's fulfilling the need of that employer so that they're placed into these thriving wage careers shortly after graduation. So, yeah.
Thank you so much. So are you saying that our employers and folks with these hot green jobs or hot jobs need to vet their trainers and their training facilities and placement folks? Are you saying that, Jackie?
That is exactly what I'm saying, because oftentimes it feels one-sided, right? So when you're the workforce development organization, and especially if you're a nonprofit, there's this history of like, we have to be super deferential and just be grateful for every dollar that comes to us and to take a partnership however we can get it. And we can't do that anymore, because at the end of the day, sometimes people forget that there's a person attached to every single data point. And at the end of the day, if we are not doing our jobs, if they don't lead to family sustaining wages and a really, a career that allows them to thrive where they live, right? So it is a conversation to have with employers. And again, this is a long strategy, right? Because we also know that, relationships are built at the speed of trust. And so this is going to be an ongoing conversation and a partnership. And so you have to be willing to invest in the long run to build that partnership to make it happen. But again, yes, I do believe that training programs should absolutely be vetted. And then another piece is to disaggregate that data once you get it, right? So that's another thing that people really talk about as well. You have these really great training outcomes, but I would love to see how many women, how many people of color, let's talk about it. How many of these folks that you place into these programs are degreed versus those who have taken another work path, So until we have these conversations, there's a lot of work that we need to do. And I can see this it's an issue right now, but I can see that absolutely happening, especially once these dollars come in and people from all over the place decide, oh, I'm going to do a training program today. I'm going to make it up and post my flyers and recruit people. So
yes. And now with good social media and good digital graphics, you can make anyone a believer. One thing when we started at Charter Help, one thing that I noticed that when I talk to folks now, workforce development is a buzzword, but even 2 years ago when I was talking to people, it was like, are very charitable, are the dented toy. Somebody called it the dented toy bin. I was so offended. But, this idea that everyone in a workforce development program is either a second chance situation or a high school dropout. I'm like, I have worked with folks in workforce development programs with master's degrees that still can't find a job, that's trying to cross-train or up-train or transition into a different field. There's all sorts of folks in this field. So you also see some of our biases show up in how we work with workforce development programs. I also say that to say it's our choice to work with workforce development programs came from the idea that if we put it on a regular job board or a well-known platform that anyone can access, and we are using this green language that Sharea's talked about, you can almost guarantee you're going to see the difference in who applies, who even knows to apply, who feels like they can apply for these jobs, who's even aware, because we can make things so green and so electrified that sometimes folks don't know that you're a mechanic and you're exactly who we're looking for, or you're EA and I absolutely need your administrative skills and you'll be working on green stuff. So here's a green job, right? It may not be as intricate and detailed as maybe we've kind of created, and to open up the playing field to everyone, we felt like it was fair to work with workforce development programs. For example, Lacey, but we work with a number of them, and those are the folks that are out doing the work. Those are the folks out recruiting people, women, people of color, people with disabilities, right? There's all justice impacted folks. These are the programs that are doing it. So when you say you want these pipelines and you want this diversity in your company, and you are not working directly with these programs, then I'm very curious as to how you're getting it, because I strongly doubt your HR person is out hitting the pavement, right, looking for these folks. when there are all kinds of programs that should be well vetted, but all kinds of programs that are available and ready to hear what you need and find that candidate and get them the training that they need to get hired. And that's the connection we want to start encouraging. Yolanda, last but definitely not least, from an employer's perspective, are there any pitfalls that you all see coming, or is there a pitfall that you've experienced, or even that you imagine might come with all these new changes?
I'm hoping no, right? Because I mean, we need, with us building the all electric vehicles and autonomous vehicle, you know, we're hoping that the roads get fixed, that they're saying get fixed, all the bridges get fixed, that they're going to get fixed, and the charging stations everywhere, you know, because that will ease, even though like our Hummer fully charged and one full charge can get up to 350 miles, that eases people's minds, you know? So that's the only thing I'm hoping, is that everything that is being said is going to happens, and somebody doesn't come in from outside and try to put a big wedge in there.
Yes, I understand. So from an employer point of view, employers like, look, we building these cars, we putting them on the road. I need for whoever and whoever to connect and make sure that we have people, right, to do the job and move it forward. And while employers play a huge role, that really is the mindset, Yolanda, as an employer myself, that really is the mindset, right? I care sometimes less about the how. That's why I work with workforce development centers. So the professionals like Jackie and Sharon can figure out who and what, and I just can tell you this is how many people I need, and I need these folks by this time, and you all are the professionals and the experts, and I'll call me when you're ready, right? That is the relationship we want to start. And it's great as a business owner because I don't have to spend my time, which that's not my expertise anymore, on that, but my expertise is finding the folks that's what they do. So I agree with you, Yolanda. Yolanda's like, look, we got these trucks coming, and I'm gonna need y'all to make sure that the workforce is up and running so we can do our job, right? So thank you so much for that, Yolanda. So we're gonna do one more question, and then we have some questions in the Q&A chat over here. So if you have questions, please put it in the Q&A portion. It should be your right. So let's dig into this last question, and then we'll get into the Q&A, and it'll be time already. See, it goes fast when you're having fun. Let's see. Okay, I'm gonna ask for one. I put 1 and 2. What is one principle, one guiding principle that we see happening in policy and placement, training as an employer? What is one guiding principle that you think we need to abandon? Like, don't do that anymore. Just very quickly. I know we've done this in the past, but let's not do this anymore. Shreyas, I'm gonna steal yours. Let's stop calling everything green, because it allows for equity when we open it up, right? For people that may not even know what green always means, right? So if we're gonna say green, let's put some context behind it. That's the one I'm gonna go with. So stolen, Sheree, stolen. So let's start with you, Jackie. What's one principle you just like, please stop?
Yeah, the first piece is just saying any job is a good job when it's, you know, when placement is concerned. So I'm not gonna count that as a win if you say like, oh yes, she went back to the exact same job, you know, after that training program, unless it came with a pay bump and a title bump. So until then, we just have to stop saying that any job is a good job and be honest about it. And then also stop, you know, attributing low pay to low skilled workers. Like that's another piece I just want gone and in the water. It's like, because they're in a low wage job doesn't mean that they're low skilled. We just need to right size and put them on the path, you know, to a better job. So.
Got it. Good one. Sharon?
I think for me it would be, I think it's important for employers to unlearn the misconception that education equates qualification. Like I've worked with so many fellows and participants who don't have the 4-year degree. Maybe they only have like a GED, but they just want a chance. And now they're thriving in like clean technology or working with startups and stuff like that. So I think that would be mine.
Wonderful. Yolanda?
So I would have to say that Jacqueline actually stole mine, but I would say like the whole you should be just happy you have a job. You know, like if anybody complains, like, okay, or tries to put their input in, and then somebody just says, you should just be happy you have a job.
The microaggression of it all, right? When we say things like that, especially folks that are in management. And I think sometimes we get lost in our world and we say some horrible things, and maybe not with the intention of being horrible, but to that person that you're talking to. And I do agree with you, Yolanda, and I also believe that as we go into this new frontier that we're moving into, that feelings and how people feel and are treated it's coming back alive. You know, for a while, you know, things were rough, so folks were just happy to have a job, right? And wasn't gonna ruffle any feathers when you said that to them. But now I feel like we are in a climate where people are not going to accept any old behavior from everyone. So also quality of work is not just like the job, but also the environment, the culture in which we're creating for people to work in. I just read that, you know, this passion over profit is real. Folks are saying like, I don't want to deal with that, and I don't know where their money is coming from. I need my money, but some folks got some money from somewhere, and they are not taking these jobs that are not ideal, right? That don't have a upward mobility. And I know we want to believe that everyone is grabbing for jobs, but everybody is looking for a quality job. So I really appreciate that comment. And Shreyas, what would be yours? Like, please throw it away.
I think to kind of segue from what others were saying, I really just, you know, second this point around not any job's a good job. It would be stop thinking of labor and workers as a cost to minimize and as an asset to invest in. And also, if I can just take another second to say, it is a win-win. Business, this is not just the nice thing to do or a good thing to do or the moral thing to do, although it is. Especially in this society that we live in right now, it is a moral imperative. It is also good for business. We always hear from business, I can't find workers. Well, maybe you're not paying them enough. The law of supply and demand works the same in labor markets. Or in trucking. Trucking is huge for pollution, and we got to get on zero emission trucks. Well, trucking jobs suck. They are sweatshops on wheels. Not my quote, not my phrase, but it is true. And so it is a constant turnover, constant churn in these industries. And so businesses will actually have better chances recruiting, retaining workers. They will realize benefits in productivity. It is a win-win. And then lastly, I'd just say that investing in our workforce is investing in our climate change, our capacity to deal with climate change. We've seen it time and again that if you don't invest in the skills, you may not get the environmental outcomes that you think you're going to get from these different programs. People need to have the proper training and education and experience. And all these things are really, I think, again, a win-win when we see these as sort of mutually compatible.
Absolutely. My one last thing, I know I said I was going to steal Jay, but I actually came up with my own, is that we have a diversity, inclusion, and equity problem, but you don't. You have a hiring practice problem. And I hear a lot of employers say that, like, oh, we have a no, I know a lot of folks that look like me and you that are looking for work, that would love a nice paying job. You don't have necessarily a diversity problem. On top of that, because it'd be very layered, but on top of that, you have HR issues. So I also think we have to hold the folks that are being paid the wage to take care of that part of our businesses accountable. So if we get pools of all of anything, right, not just all white men, but if you get a pool of all Black women, it is up to the HR person to say, like, all of one thing is not what we're looking for. if you're looking for a diverse talent pool, right? So it would be up to that person to say, we have to go back out and recruit again, that this is not okay, that we are not going to choose these two positions out of this group. We will interview and do the entire process with everyone, but this is not okay. And that has to be an internal thing that happens, because I often hear people talking about having a diversity inclusion issue, and I'm like, no, it might be more of an inclusion issue. And I'm interested to know where you're posting your jobs and what agencies and programs you're working with to get the skilled talent that you're looking for. And often nobody goes that far. It's just a nice to say, like we say it's nice to have. It's like a nice to say that you have a diversity issue. There's all types of pipelines of for Black engineers, Latinx engineers, Asian engineers. You can find a pipeline for anything. And if you talk to the right people, we can help you find those pipelines. So really quick, before we go into the questions, I'm going to ask that my panelists put their information in the chat, not the Q&A, but the chat. So people can copy and paste that if they want to. And then we're going to go into the questions for our last 15 minutes. But it's very important that they put their information here, because it is extremely important that you know how to contact them. And if they can't help you, maybe they can refer you to someone. But if your HR department does not have any direct pipelines with community workforce development programs, you have a hole in your boat. There's no way that you are spreading the word the way you should be spreading the word if the information is only available on your website, or only available at your university job page, or on your LinkedIn. Those are what you call very exclusive places, right? And if you want it to be more inclusive, then we have to put it in places where everyone resides. So thank you all so much for putting that in there. Let's get into the questions. Let me just put my information in case anybody want to talk to me about it. Okay, let's see. Oh, cool. We have some questions. What I'm going to do is I'm going to read the question, and then I'll shoot it to the person that I think it best fit. And if there's no one, then I probably won't read their question, but I will follow up with you afterwards. And if I do shoot it to someone and someone else on here has a comment or an answer to that to add on, just jump right in. What advice do you have for equity-focused utilities who want to address workforce challenges as a part of transportation electrification plans? I'm going to give that to Shreyas. What advice do you have for equity-focused utilities who want to address workforce challenges as a part of their transportation electrification plans?
I think, utilities tend to be, I also think I know who put that question in. So I'm going to say utilities tend to be union represented shops. And so the first thing I would do is sit down with workers and the union and bring them into that conversation. I think they are your best recruits. They know what it takes. They have contacts. And in my experience, old school is still the best way. It's about, your friends and your family and your social network. You can do all the social media stuff you want and radio ads and this and that, but there's a lot of noise and chatter out there. The best recruitment is, when a worker is bringing in somebody else that's just tried and true, but that's getting in the weeds of recruitment. But that would be my one piece of advice is bring workers into that discussion and have them part of the solution to that.
Thank you so much for that. All right. Did Factory Zero retain workers to make EVs? I'm not sure. And
that would be my area. Yeah. So yes. So everybody was given the option to retain their recall rights to come back to the factory if they wanted to. I know eventually, we're still in construction and the building is still being made to bring all the workforce back. Currently, we still have some that are off in different factories or decided to stay out until the plant was ready. But we do have those that were here that when the plant went down, who retained their recall rights, they will be getting the option to come back if they choose to. And we will be hopefully, well, we will in the future, once we get the other parts of the plant up and running and built, we can start hiring some more people or give the people option to transfer here if they want to.
Great. Thank you for that answer. Holly, you have 2 questions. For your first questions, do we know of any good nonprofit or firms in the Chicago area? I do. If you hit me up on LinkedIn, I'll have to find the information, but I do have 1 or 2 contacts that I can send to you, and I'd be happy to share that with you. But your second question, can someone comment on the role that apprenticeship models could have? When I worked in the UK, this was a huge part of workforce development. So Jackie, I'm going to ask you about the apprenticeship model and the role that it could have. I know currently in America, the apprenticeship model is celebrated. I think one of the challenges with apprenticeship model is in 5 years, will it be the same jobs that are here today where the fresh, new, good paying money is happening, good paying jobs are happening? But I'm interested to hear from you, Jackie, and then Sharon, if you have any comments for that as well. Well, how could the apprenticeship model work here?
Yeah, so top of mind when I'm thinking about it, apprenticeship would be a really effective model here because I think there's this renewed energy around apprenticeship in general. And then there's also conversations around non-traditional, apprenticeships. So that means stepping outside of those hard trades and really moving into other sectors as well. So I think it could play a strong role for us, both for our current workforce needs. So if we're reimagining what an apprenticeship process could be, it doesn't necessarily have to take years to become an apprentice, right? So we could build that now for our current workforce to quickly upskill them. But then I also see like a pre-apprenticeship model being incredibly helpful as we think about the future workforce. So we know that young people also need a pathway into employment, right? So if you also have a pre-apprenticeship model, that then once they become of age, they're then able to take those skill sets, either roll into a traditional apprenticeship, or we can directly put them into a job placement. So I definitely see us using an apprenticeship model as a great way for us to upskill and train workers. However, we also know that there's a lot of constraints with that in the moment because of the work that you have to do to get it set up state by state. And so there's a lot of bureaucracy and red tape in order to get it established, but it could absolutely be done. And we're seeing folks do that. So
yeah. Sharon, do you have anything, or you want to go to the next question? The next question is you.
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can go next because pretty much Jackie hit on nail on the head. Yeah.
Okay. I'll answer this one. Are there remote jobs in places other than Detroit, Cali, and Washington, D.C.? I would say absolutely. I think now it's like the high end of remote jobs. So yes, I would say you probably need to seek in those specific places. And also I find putting remote as your keyword in there to pull up those particular jobs is very important. And then they also have, what is it called, you all, when it's like a hybrid, like you work from home and you can work from the office, or you have a choice. I've heard all kinds of interesting models as we re-enter full-time work, outside of just on the computer. So there's some interesting models. So they may not all say remote, but they may have remote in the job description. But yes, I have seen people work all over the country remotely. Okay, how can my wife pivot to an e-mobility space from the medical field? A second question says, advice for someone who wants to pivot from e-mobility space to software tech work. So one is a bit more of a pivot because they're coming from a totally different industry, and one, we're in the same space generally, but they want to kind of shift to another specific part of the ecosystem. So Sharon, with transitioning and pivoting, what's your advice there?
I think it's the biggest thing is just like take that chance and go out there and do it. I think I'm going to probably age myself as a millennial, but I saw this post that like, if Kanye can run for president, women, put yourselves out there and apply for any job.
So age yourself right there, bam.
Yeah, because I feel like like I had mentioned earlier, I have so many stories about like our APC fellows who had this misconception of like, oh, I need to have this 4-year degree to work for this company or blah blah blah. But it's just like, no, if you put yourself out there and you intentionally find the right training provider. So yes, they provide you with the technical skills, but are they investing in you as a person to find that clean tech career? So rather than just checking off a box, are they investing in you as a person? And I think that would be like my biggest advice to that person.
Thank you. It's called telework and hybrid work. Thank you so much, Ms. Dixon, that gave me the words that I was looking for out there. So we're coming to a close, everyone. This has been great. As you can see, workforce development folks, we could talk about this. We've really limited what we said today because we could go on and on about all kinds of things, but we have been on our best behavior. So before we head out of here, I would love to know from each panelist, what do you want? What's your ask? What do you need people to do? What would you like? Would you like any insight? Would you like any communication? Anything like that? Jackie?
If you know anyone who is interested in launching their career in tech or upskilling in technology, which is inclusive of green economy jobs, please go to perscolas.org. We will route you to the appropriate training. So even though I'm based in Seattle, we are across 17 cities and growing. So if you want to build those skills, come on over to Perscolas and we'd be lucky to have you.
Okay, and you put Perscolas in the chat, right? How to contact you. Okay, and what about you, Sharon? What's your ask?
Similar to Jackie, if anyone's interested in training or going into the clean technology sector, we have a few workforce development programs launching in the winter. One focused on microgrid, another on e-bike and e-mobility repair. So if anyone's interested, definitely check out lacy.org.
All right, and that's in the chat as well. Yolanda, do you have an ask?
An ask. Just everybody keep an open mind. Everybody has their negative thoughts right now on, wanting to transition from a combustion engine to an electric engine, and just keep an open mind. We need a cleaner world for our people, for our families, our children. So please just keep an open mind.
Thank you. We need an open mind. And Shreyas, what is your ask? Do you need anything from us?
I would say more of just, inviting folks to an opportunity. We have, California was really fortunate. We've got this huge budget surplus. We got, record amount of funding that we're going to be putting to, continue investing in this sector. And so, it's an open invitation to partnerships, no single entity, but, reach out to us as you need to. But, we invest in these training partnerships of employers, workers, community groups, et cetera. So, maybe the ask is start building those partnerships if you're interested in some funding, and keep an eye out for when those solicitations come out, probably early next year.
Yes, I would say for Charger Help, my ask would be that when we're having conversations about our EV infrastructure, that remember that operation and maintenance is essential to the infrastructure actually working. We can put all the EV charging stations in the ground, but if we don't have a workforce ready to fix them and troubleshoot them, then that's going to be a problem. And it's also an opportunity for us to continue to create net new jobs. We don't take the place of the electric contractor. They are brilliant and do what they do very well, but we do have an opportunity, which I encourage all employers to rethink the positions and how can we create some entry-level positions and some on-ramps into middle-class incomes for people at our jobs that we currently have. Maybe normally or historically we ask for a degree. Do you really need a degree? Is that necessary? Is it preferred? Those kinds of thinking, think tanks have to start happening in order for us to become this more equitable workspace that we all love talking about. So I encourage that the entrepreneurs and the management teams and HR folks really start to think with a different lens of creating a new workforce development space that really, really helps everyone and doesn't put us in these boxes, right? So let's just Remember these asks. These are things that make things happen. We appreciate you all being here. We're going to end 2 minutes early, but if we go any further, we'll go way over 1:30. So I'm going to stop us now. Thank you all for attending. Very nice talking with you, Yolanda, Jacqueline, Sharayas, and Sharon. Thank you for your time. And that is it for the Electrified Employment Panel. Thank you. Enjoy.